Speaking of the Steelers defense, though, Rooney also shared his thoughts on Stephon Tuitt. In the last couple of days, a lot has, I feel, come about of Stephon Tuitt. We don't really know what the future is, but his Pittsburgh area home was sold. Usually that means nothing. In this situation, it could mean a lot. Rooney said that they'll meet with him in a couple of weeks to talk about the future. Do you ever expect Stephon Tuitt to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers again, given all the evidence?
I don't know, man. I'm obviously very considerate and praying for him and his family. But with that being said, I mean, just from like a football perspective, I mean, it's tough on both sides, really. I knew that this was going to be a heavy topic this offseason because here's the deal: Tuitt missed pretty much all of 2019 with an injury. He bounces back in 2020, has a career year. It was phenomenal. By far the best year of his career. And then last year, misses all year with the knee injury / the stuff he was dealing with personally. But he's one of their highest paid players. And, he's got a cap hit. They added a void year to his contract, but he's still got a cap hit next year of like 14 something million. They don't save a ton of money by just cutting him. But I don't know how you're going to trade him. I don't know what you're going to get in return to offset the value. That's even if he wants to play football again. We don't even know that. So I think that's the thing that they've obviously got to figure out first is, does he want to continue to play football? If he does, then you can worry about, all right, what are we going to do with this contract? Whether it's, I don't see them extending him to make him cheaper just because, I mean, I don't know how you extend a guy who's missed 2 of the last 3 seasons at that type of money.
That's where I was heading. I think the only way financially that this could work out for the Steelers is if they do extend him, but I just don't think that you could.
It's such a gamble.
It's such a gamble because you can't at the same time though, like maybe you could extend him to a very low deal, like it still doesn't work out in the Steelers' favor, I don't believe, but it's an option, it's a healthy year. It's a year that he didn't put wear and tear on his body, but at the same time, like Butler made it known a couple of times throughout the season or early in the season that Stephon Tuitt needed to get into football shape. And I saw him, I walked by him 2 or 3 times early in the season. I didn't see him much at the end. And you could tell that he was making that transformation, but he wasn't in the body that you're used to Stephon Tuitt seeing. At the same time though, like you do have to understand that the mental aspect of this is huge. It's the most important part. It comes down to him ultimately. I don't know. If he doesn't play, do the Steelers just roll with Chris Wormley? Is that an option?
I mean, I think Wormley is going to be in the fold. With Tuitt, if Tuitt doesn't return, and Alu has said that he wants to come back, but, there's Alu's older. He's, 35 years old. He's not a guaranteed lock to be back either. Really, it just depends. But I definitely think they need an investment, whether it's a free agent or a decent draft pick to come in and contribute early. Just because, I mean, we saw this year, you need 6 defensive linemen. And once injuries and things like that start happening, you don't want to get into the situation where you're playing guys like, Henry Mondu and guys like that just off the streets, big snaps. So I think if there's a good thing that could have came out of this season, I do think that Loudermilk showed a lot more than I thought he had in him, to be honest with you. I did not like his college tape whatsoever. I thought he was a decent scheme fit for the Steelers, but I just didn't see it. I still don't know if I ever see him developing into like a starter just from like a pass rusher standpoint. I think he's really, really raw there. But a run defender, I thought he was one of their better run defenders on the defensive line. So that was encouraging, and he got a ton of experience this year.
That was my question next is you're probably going to get Monty Adams back on like a pretty team-friendly deal. Isaiah Loudermilk is there, probably going to get Chris Wormley back. He's a free agent, and he played pretty well. Yeah. You might get Tyson back. We'll assume Tyson comes back. Is that enough? Like if you roll into the season with Monty Adams, Chris Wormley, you don't expect a jump. You don't expect any type of jump.
I think you've got to add one more guy, like preferably a guy that can play at the end spot. Just because, I mean, if you want to roll the Wormley thing, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about this moving forward throughout the spring, but Wormley's deal is kind of interesting to me because he did have his best year of his career, but he converted a lot of pressure or a lot of sacks with not a lot of pressures over the course of the season. So I don't want to say that his season was lucky. It just like pressures are always a really good indicator of the future. If you're a guy that's constantly around the quarterback, you're going to accumulate a lot of sacks. He really didn't get a ton of pressures, but he had a decent amount of sacks. So I wonder how the Steelers are going to view him and prioritize him and what that deal could look like. So that's interesting to me. I definitely think Adams has to be back. I really liked what I saw just from an athleticism standpoint, really quick off the ball. But yeah, I definitely think you still need to add another guy capable of at least playing in the rotation at defensive end. Cam Hayward's also getting, I think next year he's going to be 33.
Yeah.
That's a lot of wear and tear. Like he's a guy that doesn't need to be playing, 80, 85% of snaps. You probably need to get that in the 70s just with his age. If you want to kind of prolong his career to where he could still be a big piece of the team, when this rebuild's done, hopefully in like 2 years or something like that.
All right. So say Tuitt doesn't come back. Tyson does. Where on the priority list, where do you put defensive end?
I mean, they've got holes everywhere. I mean, I've tried to explain that to people. I don't know, but they've got a decent amount of money to spend in free agency. But they've got holes on the defensive line. They have a massive black hole at inside linebacker that they got to get figured out. They were bringing Devin Bush and Joe Schobert off the field. Schobert's not going to be back, in my opinion. No. Bush will be, but I still think there has to be an investment in inside linebacker. That was some of the worst inside linebacker, I think, play that I've ever seen.
When Marcus Allen plays significant snaps at dime, you start to realize this is a problem.
And then, obviously Witherspoon, you hope that he comes back, but if they can't retain him, you got to – I mean, even if they retain him, you still need to go get a corner. With Joe Hayden probably not coming back. Edmonds could be back on a team-friendly deal. I don't know what you pay a guy like that that's just really like a solid run player, limited playmaker, though. I still think he'll probably cost you like $3-4 million per, which I wouldn't necessarily hate.
No, that's a good deal. I mean, what was this? His 5th-year option was almost 6.5 or something like that. Yeah. To get him on 3-4, that'd be fine. All right, where does inside linebacker? I think inside linebacker is pretty high on that list.
I do too.
I don't know if defensive end is above corner either.
It's really just a matter. I mean, because you almost have to look at this through stages, right? Like seeing you got to look and see who they're going to bring back of their own guys, and then you'll see what the start of free agency looks like, and then you got to move towards, the draft. And then after the draft, you'll kind of be able to see, like, what more than likely what the team's likely to look like come training camp. And you'll see, like, throughout the summer, like, all right, where do we have holes and who's still available? Who could we possibly bring in or trade for before the season really gets rolling? So, there's a lot of questions. Especially on the defensive side of the ball. Offense just has more youth to where really you're just figuring out like who's even going to be a part of this thing moving forward.